I know it's cool, but it's only light.
As lighters, the next thing we're going to do is add the Gaffer Node, which is adding lights, which is the most fun part. So we're going to add a node to add some lights. Now the node is called a GafferThree, and a gaffer in a production is the chief lighting technician. So the node is aptly named Gaffer. 3 is the version of that node so far. So, and as you know, a gaffer does the execution and the design of the light plan for a production. So we're now going to be designing our light plan. So let's hover over our node graph here, hit tab, Gaffer3, that's the node we want. We're going to add it in after our camera, after the merge of our camera. Put it right there. Hit green to get our parameters. First thing we always do is change the name. So we're going to call this I call them lights. And then I use the version of the file that I'm doing. That way I can change my lights later on and keep the previous lights in case I want to revert back with a little bit more ease. So I'm going to use version 2, revision 1 as my title. Alright, so now we have our lights coordinated with our file name. And then to add lights to our scene is just to simply hover over this area here and right click. Now, if you right click over any of these things, I'm right clicking right now, you'll see nothing happens. You have to right click over the name and then you get your little pop-up and your add button. So you go over to add, and we're going to add the Arnold Spotlight to start off with. And the Arnold Spotlight's like any other light in any other program that you've used. If you have not used it, we'll go over the basics of each part. Let's see, here's the geometry, so you can have your width, your center of interest, your near and far for your camera, where it starts cutting out, and then your translate, rotate, and scale numbers if you want to plug in a specific number. Most of the time, what you're going to use most is the material, and under geometry you've got your radius of your light, lens radius, cone angle, penumbra, roundness, and we'll go over each one of those in just a minute. And then in common is the common uses our color of our light, intensity, exposure. And notice those 3 are also up here, so it's a little shortcut. You don't have to come down here every time. You can just change exposure or intensity or color up in this area. Your samples, you want to up your samples on anything. Your AOV, and this is where you're going to name your light so that we can add AOVs, which we'll be adding later on. And then, of course, you have your contributions: diffuse, specular, subsurface, scattering, indirect, and volume contributions of the light. Let's start with finding that light. So we have the spotlight added. It's now in our scene graph. Remember, this is a scene graph. This is the Katana version, and this is USD, which is a scene explorer. So you've got the 2. And light, since it's a native Katana node, we are going to be in our scene graph area. So here's our spotlight. Now notice if we click on here on this spotlight, it does not highlight here. And if we go down to our view and we look at perspective view, you're not going to see our light highlighted in our viewer. So the best way is either to click on the light there, and then you'll get your manipulators. Or let's say we were here, we didn't have it highlighted there, did not have the spotlight highlighted there. We can either, again, click on here, or if we click here, notice it's not highlighting. So to make it highlight once you click here so it syncs with our scene graph, we're going to change the sync selection. And for me, this is key because I don't like double clicking and thinking I clicked on this and it's doing something in my viewer and it's not. It's just easier to sync it. So you want it, it's currently it's off, we want it on in and out. So now if we click on Spotlight, notice it highlights that and our manipulators show up. Just a little thing that made my life a lot easier once I knew that. All right, so now we have our manipulators. We're in perspective view, so when, just to move our camera, our perspective camera, we just click Alt and left click and move it around. And we can move our light up. Let's actually make it a little larger so we can see what we're looking at. Come on, let's go. It's not growing very fast. There we go. Finally hit it, see it. Alright, let's get the manipulator back. Let's move it back. Kind of point it to him. Do a little rotate. Our manipulator's the same. W for translate. E for rotate. R for scale. And if you hover over it, it'll remind you of what letters do what, if you're not already familiar. So we're going to rotate it a little toward him, and a little down. Now, I'm guessing that's probably pretty close. It's about as far away as maybe a light would be on a stage. You've got to think of a stage, and a spotlight isn't going to be really close to him, because otherwise, in real life, you'd see the spotlight on the stage. And usually you see the spotlights hung around the stage, right? So that's where we're going to kind of put our spotlight so that it emulates real life. So let's lift it up a little, rotate it down, and just to be sure we're actually staring at him, we can do one of two things. We can actually render, or we can go into our spotlight, go look through our spotlight to see what we're looking at. So this is the camera view of our spotlight, and then you can kind of move and manipulate around. And what I'm doing is I'm holding Alt, the middle mouse button, and then scrolling to get kind of the view of what I want there. Now, go back to perspective view. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and render. I must have rendered earlier. Let's do a live render. If we do a live render, we can see the changes as they go. So to set up live render, you have to click on this little camera here, make sure it's highlighted in yellow. We want to make sure this row right here, if you hover over it, it'll give you live render updates. Updates are only sent for the included objects. So updates will not be sent for anything else in the scene except for these two items. So if you do everything, it slows it down. So that's the one thing about Katana that's really good, is you can pick and choose what you want the machine to process. So we're going to do the spotlight. So we have that set. So now if we go to render and we hit live render and we look at our monitor, it will pop up here. Now notice it's black because our exposure is 0. So let's bring our exposure up to let's try 18. Yeah, there we are. Notice LVO here is a little smushed. It's like he's squashed or somebody stomped on him a little bit. To get him back to normal size, the easiest way to do it is go to your viewer, go to perspective, go to perspective, hit on another camera for a minute, go back to perspective, and if you go back to your monitor, you'll see his regular size again. So now we can see LVO, where the light is hitting, where the shadow's hitting, and we can work from there. So if we go into our geometry, let's look at, I'm going to change the exposure up to 20 just to show for the side view. It's very bright if you look at our viewer. Let's look at our camera, you'll see, oops, monitor, you'll see, it's not too bad at 20, but it's kind of bright. Anyway, in order to see the viewer and the monitor at the same time, which I find a little bit easier to judge my lights, is if you left click and drag on the viewer tab, you'll see that little hand, and you can bring it over everywhere. I put it down in the bottom half of my node graph area. And that way I can see both the monitor version and my viewer version. So right now it's on render cam, that's why the render is that. Here's the spotlight view, and if we go to perspective view, you'll see it there. So we can see everything at the same time. Alright, so each of the items in our lights, what do they do? How are they going to affect our lights? We're going to talk about only Spotlight right now. We'll go over other lights in other videos. But Spotlight, we have radius, and radius is the size of the camera, or the light in this case. If you're looking through it, it's the camera light, I guess. But it's the size. So if you change this size, you can either change it by number there or by slider. If you look in our viewer, you can see that that light is getting very large. And it's not really doing much in our monitor view. But yet it is. It is doing something. It's just not changing the size of the light going around LVO. You see the light is still staying in this area. But what it's doing is, this is the softness or sharpness of his shadow. So if you look now, it's at a radius of 2.5, and you can see his, let's go ahead and lift up LVO a little bit to get his shadow. You'll see at 2.5, his shadow's pretty sharp. So if we up that radius, make it a very large radius, you'll see the shadow is getting softer as we go. So that's what radius does. It's the size of the camera. Notice how big it is. You can't even see it on our little viewer here. But the softness of his shadow is correlating to the radius. So higher radius, softer shadow. Lower radius, sharper shadow. Now it is a spotlight, so it's going to be rather on the sharper side. So we're going to make it, I don't know, let's make it like, let's say a 10 for now. No, or a 4. Drop it where it is. Alright, so we're just going to leave it there, but that's what that one does. The lens radius, actually let's change that radius down so we can look at the camera. I'm going to keep the radius pretty low. I'm going to say a 1.1, just so we can see the the light in our perspective view. So the lens radius, what this is the size of the circle of light, the radius of the light. So right now the radius is this big, right? So if we make this larger, notice that it gets bigger in our scene, right? It still gets bigger in our viewer rather, but in our monitor side, it's also getting bigger. So the radius going around LVO is the lens of that. So it's also going to dim, because as it gets bigger, it's becoming a softer light. When it gets smaller, it's becoming a sharper, more brighter light in effect, right? Large radius, lens radius, small lens radius, and you can see it on both sides. All right, so that's what the lens radius is doing. Cone angle. Now cone angle, that's from 0, let's call it 0 to 180, which you'll see on the slider. So it's this radius, or excuse me, this angle. So if you look at our cone, and let's make them smaller, it'll probably show you a little better. Notice that the radius of that circle in the front as it goes smaller, it's as small as it can go. It's a zero cone, so it's basically cylinder-like. And then it'll get bigger, bigger, bigger in relation to the size of the light or the camera light. So if you're at 0 and your camera light is really small, you'll see that it's really narrow, right? It's going down. Let's do a 0.1 on the radius. That's the size. See how small, and then your cone angle will become bigger and bigger, right? Now it does add to the radius of that light as well. It's just in a different way. So it's larger that way. So it's the size of that angle right there, right? This is about a 76 degree, I was going to say 75, so that's pretty good, 75 degree angle. And then if we keep going, that angle is 180. It's flat, right? 0 would be a cylinder. So let's put it back around 75-ish. All right. Penumbra. Penumbra is easier if you look, I believe if you look at it in this way. So let's look at it through the camera that way and go Penumbra, and you see that other circle here. It gives you that softness on the edge, not his shadow, but the edge of the light of the shadow, or the edge of the, the edge of the shadow, light shadow. So a larger penumbra gives you a softer edge, and the larger, it looks like it's getting smaller, but it's actually this edge here, so it's between this and this is larger. The smaller that edge is, see how tiny the edge is, the frame gives you a sharper. So just a slight at 6, and then a really sharp at 0. So that's your penumbra. Penumbra. We're going to jump down to aspect ratio. Not used very much, but it's basically that you're squishing the light. Watch the light. See how it squishes? It's like it's an eye. It's shutting an eye. It's like, oh, closing the eye. And you can give, that may be good for like if you're in a car and you're looking through if you get up close, if you're looking at, you want to frame the eyes or something of that nature, it'll give you that squishy kind of elongated light. All right, let's get this guy back over to this direction. So we're looking at LVO from the side. And then a roundness of the light is, let's go back. The roundness of the light, notice our spotlight is completely round. If we make that a 0 roundness, notice it's a square. So that might be helpful if you have blinders or blockers on your light. But we want a round spotlight. And it actually does make that a little bit more square on the thing too. But let's go to a full roundness. So those are your geometry, your positions and whatnot on your light itself. So let's go back to the side view. All right. Now, next we have, of course, color. So if you click on color, you can give it a red color, you can give it blue, you can give it purple, you can give it orange, yellow, whatever color you want your light to be. Okay. Let's go back to white. You can use RGB, the temperature, or the hue and saturation, whichever you prefer. You can add in your own numbers, you can color pick, to reset back to what you started at, just hit reset. Alright, and And we have intensity. I never touch intensity unless I want, I usually use intensity for, what is it called? Let's see. Sorry, I lost my thing. For the sky dome light. If I need to go exposure is 0 and I still need it a little darker, I'll move the intensity down a little bit. But mostly it stays at 1, and we're going to deal with exposure for any given reason. Again, it's up here as well, so you can click on that, and it has up and down buttons, so you can go use up and down. It'll go down by 1 degree or 1 stop. Same with intensity and colors up there as well. Your samples, you want your sample of this particular light to be higher, you can make it higher or lower. Volume, when you add volume, same thing. AOV, try to make that a habit and make your AOVs, name your AOVs right away, and that way when you set up your AOVs, then you can, or your light, you set up your light groups, thank you. Your light groups, it's already named for you. So I usually do RGBA _, and then we'll call this going to be our key light. So key spot. Alright, so we have our name and then our contributions. So this is our diffuse, our specular, subsurface scattering, indirect, and volume, and you can change those as needed. And that's it for lights. If you go back to our render cam view, you'll see LVO. He's kind of highlighted up. Let's go ahead and change that exposure down a little bit. Oh, too dark. Let's give him about, we'll give him about 19 right now. We'll have to fix it a little bit, but you get the idea. You'll get your light, that's your spotlight on LVO, under a gaffer. And one more thing. Oh, when we named our AOV RGBA key spot, the best thing is to also rename our actual light. So if you double click on the spotlight and you do RGBA key spot, now we have them both named the same. And when we put together our light groups and AOVs, that will be helpful. And that's it. So that was our Gaffer Node. We'll set up some more lights later on, but that's it for now. See you next time.
Oh, 'cause you're always trying to get ahead